The clarifier is not a fountain. I keep a city from arguing with its own water, and most nights that's enough of a biography. My name is Ryan. I work nights at the South Fork wastewater treatment plant, a valley of concrete bowls and polite machines that whisper forgiveness into a river that hasn't asked for it. If you've never been to a plant, imagine a cathedral that believes in plumbing. Blowers the size of Volkswagens chanting oxygen into brown water, clarifiers turning like patient clocks, a control room that hums with numbers, and a sign above a sink that says simply, hands. At home there's Lewis, who teaches ninth graders the difference between explosives and experiments. He is a chemistry teacher who uses eye protection like grammar. Our apartment has a view of a deli that forgives bad decisions with soup. On our refrigerator, taped with gaffer, we keep an index card with rules we wrote the first month we lived together and keep revising like we're raising a stubborn child. No afters without names and minutes. Compliments open no doors. Hands belong to what they're holding. Last spring we added a fourth after a videographer on a facility tour reached for my jaw to help the shot. It reads, "The clarifier is not a fountain." People ask what I do and expect jokes. I tell them I translate rain into peace. My job has verbs I trust: screen, settle, aerate, digest, disinfect, and verbs I don't: assume, hurry, embellish. I'm the night operator. I watch flows rise when storms remember their job. I listen for a bearing that wants attention. I babysit blowers. I move gates like chess pieces and chlorine like confession. On paper, I monitor. In practice, I prevent drama. When the city turned 100, communication staged a week of open water events, reservoir hikes, a pipe cutting at a main replacement, a kid's scavenger hunt with stickers shaped like raindrops, and because donors want to feel brave in safe places, a 10-minute live stream from our plant to let people feel the choreography. If you've ever stood on a catwalk watching a clarifier turning just so, you know choreography is boring on purpose. Boring keeps rivers honest. I asked that the stream be shot from the observation deck with a wide lens and a grown-up. I ask that the badge say observer, not media, because nouns are their own boundaries. I ask that the stream not happen during storm flows or chlorine tank deliveries. The reply was a calendar invite with a smiley face and a gif of a dancing droplet that had never taken a sample in its life. Lewis kissed my forehead over the sink. "We can add a line if we need to," he said. He had an exam to write and parents to email and patience to spend. "Promise me," he added, tapping the card. "Promise me," I said back. We shook hands with our eyes. The week before, I did what profession calls superstition when it doesn't want to sound earnest. I walked the plant with a notebook and a roll of yellow tape. I marked a gentle boundary at the clarifier railing, a stricter one by the chlorine building, and a line on the mezzanine where cameras stopped being tolerable. I taped no REFLECTINS beside the SCADA monitors because lenses like stealing more than they like learning. I checked the skimmers and the sludge pumps. I listened to the blowers and told myself the hum was nothing new. The hum agreed. The crew arrived on a blue Thursday with soft shoes and ambition. Their front man was a host named Brandon whose voice made everything sound like a welcome. His producer, Ellie, had practical hair and a posture that said, "Tell me where to stand and I'll make it work." 10 minutes inside the heartbeat, Brandon said, hands shaping rectangles like old movies. "Let people feel the magic." "Magic has the night off," I said. "Biology's covering." Ellie snorted in relief. We rehearsed once, the flow steady, the clarifier turning its patient circles. I pointed to the headworks, the grit chamber, the primary tanks, the aeration basins that look like coffee before you learn to drink it, the secondary clarifiers that look like coffee's apology. I explained why the skimmer arm moves slow, why the scum trough is honest, why foaming is a conversation, not a crisis. I said the line I keep handy for places designed for eyes. Transparency is where the camera stands, not what it steals. Ellie wrote it down. Brandon said, "Love that," in the tone of a person who collects slogans for later. The first stream slotted between a primary sludge pump changeout, and the moment the neighborhood hockey practice let out and moms in SUVs pretended the river was theirs. The chat, Ellie told me later, made hearts like they owed us rent. Brandon asked what a clarifier actually does. "It helps gravity keep its promises," I said. He asked how I handle the smell. "I call it by its name," I said. "Everything behaves better with its name." Then he did what cameras ask men to do, edit each other. "You've got a little glare," he murmured, thumb already lifting toward my cheek, toward a collar the lens hated. My body moved 1 centimeter. His thumb caught air, the kind of space that says this room is for tools. "The clarifier is not a fountain," I said. "Hands belong to what they're holding." He found his pocket like it had always been there. Ellie coughed competence into her headset. On the board, flow held at a rate that made engineers smile invisibly. The blowers sang the note I prefer. A raccoon I know by his attitude reconsidered my catwalk and chose dignity. We ended the stream with a wide shot of the clarifier turning and nobody's name in the reflection. Transparency wrote a thank you note to the river. The second stream was scheduled for dusk, which is planned for when the neighborhood remembers showers. I didn't like it. Dusk makes amateurs out of alarms, but development had donors to entertain and a party to narrate. Ellie promised they'd be quick. "Quick is the verb I trust least," I said. She nodded like a person who knows truth even when it refuses to wear a smile. 10 minutes before go time, a little storm cell blew up from the west, the kind that comes to cheat at darts. The wind farm upstream faltered and returned. On the influent meter, the numbers stood up straighter. I called maintenance to hold a non-essential test. I told the headworks to expect grit like a bad joke. Brandon asked if we could pivot to this breaking moment, and I said we could pivot to the view and the duty. We could not pivot to spectacle like it was ever a good idea. He nodded like a person who wanted to be believed. We went live. I explained that flow is a fact, not a drama, that pumps don't like being called heroes, that surcharge is a word you never say loudly. I did not explain that my heart rate is not allowed to be special. The plant has enough to do. The chat typed "wow" with the posture of people who think numbers are weather. Midstream, 2 local creators, men with gimbals and confidence borrowed from followers, ducked under the yellow tape to get the angle. One reached toward the railing as if touching would translate. My mouth did the thing it does when rules wear boots. "No," I said, not loud. "Back behind the line." Ellie cut the feed with practiced mercy. The men did the good thing slow. They moved and pretended they'd meant to. The clarifier turned. The skimmer arm peeled a patient ribbon off the top of something that used to be chaos. And the river forgot we existed, which is how I measure success. Afterward, Alvarez from maintenance, whose laugh sounds like a wrench settling, leaned on the railing and gave me a grin like a pump found its courage. "The smallest moves," he said. "The ones nobody claps for." "Maintenance," I said, "not heroics." 2 days later, the utility hosted what it called an alignment conversation, which is corporate for you and communications have to share a room. Around the rectangle table, me, Ellie, a deputy director in a tie shaped like optimism, Brandon, who had learned the posture of someone willing to be taught, and 2 creators who smelled faintly of brand deals. The deputy said harmonize 3 times like it could pay invoices. Brandon opened his hands. "I confused frame and lock," he said. "I wanted intimacy and reached for control. Thanks for the lesson." Ellie proposed a sentence to print on every badge next year. "The clarifier is not a fountain." I asked for its sister, Hands belong to what they're holding. We wrote 3 policies that felt like equipment we didn't realize we'd always had. First, a 1-meter tape line at any basin during public events, stenciled on concrete and printed on maps. Second, camera position charts that show where cameras may be, not only where they may not. Third, a practice of having crews say aloud on mic what they will not shoot before they roll. Make the no part of the script, Ellie said. Make the script smaller, I said. The creators nodded like people who know their rent depends on getting to nod first. A week later, a teenager showed up at visitor check-in with a folded page and the respectful anxiety of someone trying to become himself. "Can I read something not on camera?" he asked. He stood beside the observation window and read 3 sentences about the first time his mom took him to the river after a storm and told him the city was not a miracle. It was a plan. He left the paper on the control console and bolted like shyness had a schedule. I keep it under the index card now. It wrinkles when the magnet slides, which feels like the right kind of maintenance. You want a moral? I don't write those, I write log entries. I can give you a checklist. Wipe glass, count blower amps, say no before you need to, don't let a camera teach the plant what it is. The older I get, the more I think boundaries are kindness that can lift heavy. A well-timed no saves cities from needing very brave people later. Back home that week, Lewis added a 5th line because his lab had a new crop of kids who treated goggles like opinions. 5. Thank the person who keeps the door before the person who brings the light. He wrote it small, the way you write truths you plan to say often. We ate leftovers and told each other the boring parts of our days until they turned into meaning. Sometimes I replay the inch my face moved, not out of triumph, but because it belongs in the drawer labeled proof that quiet prevents theater. Sometimes I think about the night a pump seal failed and we switched to the standby without anyone outside knowing they were loved. Sometimes I remember the old operator who hums to the blowers because he swears they hold a beat better when someone believes in time. All those thoughts live next to the spare towel, the pH strips, and the peppermint I keep for operators who forget they're human. I haven't told you about the storm that taught us the difference between readiness and pride, and how we shed flow like apology and got it back like grace. I haven't told you about the sampler that hiccuped all night and confessed in the morning with a perfect composite. I haven't told you about the raccoon that once looked me in the eye like we shared a union. Those belong to the same family as the sentence we taped to the badge and printed on the map and wrote on our fridge. If you ever visit our plant on an open day, you'll stand behind a yellow line and wonder if there's enough here to interest you. There isn't if we've done it right. You'll see hands holding exactly what they're holding. You'll hear blowers humming a note that doesn't want applause. If you feel the itch to fix my collar for the shot, watch for the small motion, the small smile, and remember the line. The clarifier is not a fountain. The river will still be itself in the morning. That is the only ovation I need.